I'm Lilly. I'm going to be showing y'all how to pre-flight a Cherokee. What I always do is I go in the airplane and I turn on the master switch and all the lights, and I put the flaps down because I'm already in the cockpit. I might as well put the flaps down. And I'll get out, walk around the plane, and make sure all the lights work. Strobes and nav lights are working. Come around this way, and the landing light's working. And then, if you have a second person, this is a lot easier, but you can also use a piece of tape if you'd like. You can tape this up. This is the the stall indicator. So you can hold this up, see if that red light in there is working, or if you have a stall horn. This nav light in the strobe is working. The beacon is working. These lights up here are flashing pretty good. So we can come back around and turn off all the switches. One thing you want to make sure is that this cable right here has some tension. So this is the flap cable. It does have a little bit of tension there. And you should go along the flap and kind of jiggle it like that to make sure that it doesn't necessarily stay in one spot. It should have a little bit of slack like that. And I always go underneath and make sure that the bolts that attach to the flap are all there and tight. And then you check the ailerons. This one has an autopilot, so the servo is going to cause it to move a little bit slower than most. One thing you don't want to do is grip it like this, because this will dent the aluminum. You want to try to put two hands like this so that there's more surface area absorbing the compression that you're doing. And then ideally you want to come down here and look at the piano hinge on the end, on both ends here. There's 4 bolts, and then there's one other bolt here. So 4 more here, piano hinge. And this is the cable for the ailerons, and you want to make sure that has a little bit of slack in there as well. And then on Cherokees, you want to make sure that the wing is going to stay attached, so I like to jiggle it up and down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and sump the tanks right here. You want to get enough in the sump jar to be able to see against that white label that the fuel is blue. Kind of swirl it like this to get if there's any junk in there. I don't see any that wasn't already in the jar. And then just dump it back in here. If you were to find any contaminations in the fuel, like water or debris that shouldn't have been there, you don't dump it back in the tank, or you make sure you filter it through. Only if there's debris, not with water. Alright, stick this down in there. I'm getting 15. I usually will take the reading at least 3 times to make sure it's consistent. So I get 15 there. And down here again, we're going to look at these. We have wheel pants. Not all planes have them, but you want to make sure that they're not loose. So I kind of jiggle it like this, and it's not loose. It has a little bit of slack, but as long as there are all the bolts, should be fine. And then all the bolts on the landing gear are there. You want to make sure that none of the fasteners are loose, or that there's no hydraulic or brake, not hydraulic, we don't have hydraulics on this, but brake fluid. You don't want to look, you don't want to see any red fluid down there. Over here, you want to check the oil, which this is going to be really hot. We just landed. Goodness sakes. Yeah, you want to check the oil, make sure that it's within the manufacturer's specifications for your airplane. For ours, we keep it about 7 quarts. And when you tighten the oil cap back on there, you want to make sure you turn it until it stops, and then turn it just past that. I'm going to leave that open. And around here, we want to make sure that we check the propeller for any nicks on the leading or trailing edges. I run my hand along the whole thing. Some people will tell you that's not a good practice, because if there are nicks, it can cut you, but I would rather be cut and figure out that there's a nick than for me to not find one. I don't feel anything. And then right inside here we have this the alternator belt. We want to make sure there's tension on that one. It's not gonna, it moves a little when I touch it, but it doesn't flap. And then down here we check these wheel pants, make sure all the bolts and nuts are attached, which they are. So we're good there. Come around here, we've got our second sump. I want to make sure we get a good amount of fuel in here. This one's going to take a while because it tends to come out a little bit slower. All right, here we go. So swirl it around. It is blue. And I don't see any junk that wasn't already in the jar. So come over here, dump this in like this. Set that back on there. And all right. All right, and then do that on the same side. And the reason I set this on here, I'm not leaving it off. Just because I went and dumped this in doesn't mean I leave it off for when I just dump the next one in. Because if you leave this off, if there's water dripping from your roof or there are bugs flying around, they could go in your fuel tank. You don't want that to happen. So now that I've dumped that back in there, let's check the fuel level in here at least 3 times. Looks like we got about 17, 18 or so maybe. Looks like we've got just over 18. So we're right at the tabs. And then we'll look down here the same on these wheel pants. So no loose fasteners, no loose bolts, everything looks good. We're gonna do this with the elevator. On a Cherokee we have something called a stabilizer, so it's an elevator and a horizontal horizontal stabilizer combined. So when we move it, it's gonna move. This is the trim tab. Here it goes all the way down, and it's not gonna go all the way up as well for our strength because of the servo for the autopilot. So as long as it moves pretty well up and down, it goes to the stop both ways. You want to jiggle this a little bit, make sure that it is slack and that it's not moving when you slightly push on it. You should be cautious of this antenna. If you know anybody's washed the plane recently or done any maintenance down here, you want to make sure that the antenna is still attached. This right here is the transponder antenna, and it's really easy to accidentally maybe knock it off or forget to install it because it's such a small thing right here on the nose of the airplane. So now that we've walked around the whole airplane, we've checked pretty much everything we can think of. You know, other things to be cautious about is looking for cracks, missing fasteners, things like that. If you know that something has happened recently, you might want to look into that same area. So that's about the gist of it. It's pretty quick.
Ready to fly?
Ready to fly.